Good evening. So I assume that we'll have perhaps others joining us over the course of the evening, and so we will definitely welcome them. And just know that I arrived a little later than I anticipated, so there is a guest book in the back that if you'd be so kind to sign into as you're exiting this evening, it'd be much appreciated. With that, I'd like to say good evening, everyone. Let me begin by thanking you for joining us this evening and for the French Huguenot Church for providing us this perfect venue. I would like to thank our presenters this evening, James McBride, City Council member, who will be reading a proclamation from the City of Charleston on behalf of Mayor William Cogswell. Hagood Morrison, who many of you know. Hagood will be here this evening to provide a historical account of his grandfather, Brigadier General George P. Howell, Commandant of Parachute School, Fort Benning, Georgia, commander of one of the three forces of the 82nd Airborne Division, U.S. Army at D-Day. And then we will have French Honorary Consul Luc Chasleves, who will be giving us a presentation and update on commemorative events and initiatives this week, not just today, in France. And then we're pleased to say that we have Beatrice Frask, who is an associate professor at the Citadel, who is from France, and she will be singing La Marseillaise, and we will be joining her in the Star-Spangled Banner. As President and CEO of Charleston Sister Cities, I am reminded tonight of our organization's founder, Dwight D. Eisenhower, who created Sister Cities International in 1956 to promote peace and prosperity globally via people-to-people in a nuclear age and Cold War 10 years after World War II. Our sister city partner with Flers, France, is a result of President Eisenhower's vision. Today, June 6, 2024, we commemorate the 80th anniversary of D-Day, a pivotal moment in our history that resonates deeply with Americans, our allies, and the world. On June 6, 1944, brave Allied forces stormed the beaches of Normandy in a heroic effort to liberate Europe from Nazism. We honor the extraordinary courage and sacrifice of those who fought on the front lines for freedom and those who supported them from afar. We salute and honor those on the home front during and after the war, particularly in Charleston, who were inspired to assist the relief effort in Europe via initiatives such as the Medway Plan, founded by William Bennett and Gertrude Legendre. We extend our profound gratitude to the people of France who have preserved the memory of D-Day with unwavering dedication. The bonds forged on the beaches of Normandy have endured for 8 decades, evolving into alliances that underpin our collective security and defense of democracy today. Again, thank you for joining us this evening, and with that, I will turn the evening over to James McBride, Lieutenant Colonel Marine Corps, retired.
Good afternoon. Thank you, everybody, for coming. It's incumbent upon us to keep the legacy of these brave heroes alive. I'm a U.S. Marine Corps veteran of 25 years, retired in August of 2021. I went on 6 combat deployments, I think it was. 6 combat deployments. And I could just tell you that I just know but a small little glimpse of what these men went through in this epic battle to preserve freedom in the Western world. On just the one day, day one of the invasion of Normandy, which is part of Operation Overlord, there were over 4,000 U.S. casualties. Over 4,000 in one day. Operation Overlord continued for about 85 days after that with our allies, and we swept across Europe and freed France and freed that area. It was also the largest amphibious assault in U.S. history, and it hurts me to say that because I'm a U.S. Marine, and it was mostly Army that did that with the Navy. But just an epic, brave, sacrificial thrust that saved and preserved freedom in the Western world. I'm here on behalf of Mayor William Cogswell of the City of Charleston, and I'm going to read the city's proclamation. So, proclamation. Whereas June 6, 2024 commemorates the 80th anniversary of the D-Day landing on the beaches of Normandy during the Battle of Normandy, France, leading to the liberation of France and Europe during World War II. And whereas June 6, 2024 marks the 80th anniversary of this historic event, and with it, the momentous occasion to celebrate peace, liberty, and reconciliation. The City of Charleston commemorates the efforts of Charleston's World War II veterans and our allies who fought to defeat Nazism and reestablish freedom. And whereas the City of Charleston commemorates the efforts of Charleston's citizens led by William Montgomery Bennett and Gertrude Legendre, known as the Medway Plan, to relieve the hardships endured in Europe during World War II by initially providing direct aid assistance via the vessel Charleston Bounty from the port of Charleston destined for Flers, France. And whereas the City of Charleston agrees that the June 6th anniversary of the D-Day Allies' liberation of Europe should be commemorated annually and in perpetuity. And now, therefore, I, Jim McBride, Charleston City Councilman, on behalf of William S. Cogswell, Jr., Mayor of the City of Charleston, do hereby proclaim June 6, 2024 as 80th anniversary of D-Day for the City of Charleston. In witness whereof, I do hereby set my hand and cause the seal of Charleston to be affixed this fifth day of June in the year 2024. Signed, William Cogswell.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to speak on one such Charleston person who did serve in a memorable way his country during World War II. It's my grandson back there. This talk started out as a very tactical discussion about D-Day, the beaches, the roles of all the forces. And then my wife thankfully corrected me and said, people don't want to hear that. And she's right. There's book after book about D-Day tactics and what people did during D-Day. So this is somewhat of a personal venture. So bear with me. Hopefully you'll find it interesting. George Pierce Howell was my brother Howell's, my brother Edward's, my niece Lily's grandfather, the father of my mother. He was a U.S. military academy graduate, class of 1893, and his maternal grandfather, General John Knight, was also a U.S.M.A. graduate, class of 1868. His uncle was Colonel William Ledoux, class of 1894. Both his father and his uncle stood first in their class, and both were commissioned in the Corps of Engineers, which was typical of that time. As a result of this heritage, great things were expected of George in the academic and military field by his family, and his accomplishments will testify to he lived up to these expectations. As a boy, George was fortunate to grow up in Charleston, South Carolina, where his father was district engineer for 13 years. He attended the Goud School for Boys and graduated from Porter Military Academy before entering West Point. He got through West Point and in the summer of 26 was ordered to the Philippines and assigned to 31st Infantry in Manila. It was while stationed in Manila that George met and married Felicia North Chisholm of Columbia, South Carolina. She was also an Army daughter, her father being Lieutenant Colonel Edward North Chisholm, an engineering officer. George was the first in his class to recognize the importance of the future of airborne troops. He entered airborne training in 1940 and became executive officer of the 501st Airborne Battalion at Fort Benning under Bud Miley. He served as Commandant of the Parachute School from 1942 to 1943 and was the first member of his class to become a Brigadier General on 8 August 1942. On that board back there as you walk in, there's a picture of him with FDR during one of FDR's inspections of Fort Benning. He went overseas with the 82nd Airborne Division as Commanding General of the 2nd Airborne Infantry Brigade in 1943 and continued to serve in that capacity. He suffered a severe injury to his ankle, which precluded his jumping with his unit in D-Day. He was put in command of all the seaborne elements of the 82nd and landed on the beach in Normandy on D-Day. He was awarded the Bronze Star Medal. His citation reads, "He fulfilled this assignment with consummate skill, force, and tact. His excellent management, superior leadership, and clear thinking and initiative effected the accomplishment of this task in the most exemplary manner." In September of 1944, the Supreme Allied Commander decided he needed an airborne officer of the highest qualifications to be his deputy head at headquarters, Allied Expeditionary Force Section, planning future operations. This was in the Netherlands. George was a natural choice to deal with the British due to his knowledge, charm, courtly manner, and while he hated to give up his command, there was no choice. In his new job, he was thrown in contact with presidents, kings, prime ministers, in addition to all the top British generals who were greatly impressed by his manner and charm. He was awarded the Legion of Merit for exceptional meritorious conduct in the performance of outstanding services in the European Theater of Operations. The Royal Netherlands government honored George by awarding him the Order of the Orange Nassau, rank of commander with swords for his duty as deputy head of SHAEF from 1944 to 1945 in the Netherlands. He was also decorated by the British government and was made an honorary member of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire and presented a medal and ribbon for his service to the Emperor. That's his career. Let's go back into some details. He commanded this Fort Benning, Georgia, which if you ever have a chance to go there, it's worth the trip. It was a critical period in American military history. We had watched Russia, we had watched Germany execute successful parachute drops, yet America did not have the doctrine and the experience it needed to be successful with this. So his job was to train Allied forces. We have letters, my family has letters from over 15 countries thanking him for their training. This is one, it's kind of fun. So this is from the French military mission. Dear General Howell, on behalf of the French class at Fort Benning, I wish to express my gratitude for and the welcome we have received at the parachute school. It was an unforgettable experience to witness the training of these splendid men. Their courage and their spirit was an inspiration to us all. More than ever, such an example renews our confidence in the Allied victory. Our deepest hope is to fight side by side with such splendid units. We were all deeply moved by the sudden appearance in the sky of the red parachute with the words, "Vive la France." We hope that in the near future, the same man will jump in the sky of France as the vanguard of the American Army, at which side it will be an honor to fight. So the 82nd Airborne before D-Day was divided into 3 different groups: a parachute group headed by Jim Gavin, a glider and command group headed by General Ridgway, and the seaborne element, which was headed by George Howell. He came in D+2, D+3 with a seaborne element, and then joined the 507th Parachute Infantry Regiment to commence fighting in the Continent and the Cherbourg area. So what was their goal? The goal was to seize the causeways connecting the beach to the inland, and seize these 4 or 5 access routes, to seize key points and road nodes and in tactically important locations, and to control the bridges over the Merderet and the Douve River. So after successfully landing, getting his gear to his people, he took over as the head of 507th. He had 2 goals, one of which to take over a town of Baupt, and the other to take over Bouzeville. This is an article from the newspaper about that Bouzeville operation. Several miles southwest of St. Mary-Église, which you've all heard about, on the bank of the River Douve lies a town called Bouzeville, which to the Yanks properly became Buzzville. Bouzeville is a key spot in that sector because it controls the sluice gates and causeways of a large flooded area running south and southeast of Baupt and Carrington. At midnight on June 12th, General Howell secretly brought up a battery of artillery on the opposite side of the river and sent over in assault boats the 2 platoons of infantry. When the latter signaled with a flare that they were in position, the artillery opened up with a 10-minute bombardment. It ceased at a predetermined second, and the infantrymen were on top of the Germans before they could scramble up from their shelters in foxholes. The capture of Bouzeville compelled the Nazis to withdraw from the inundated areas and eventually enabled the 2 American landing expeditions to link up. On the next day, General Howell and his men continued down and swept down into Baupt and took intact an enemy vehicle park. They destroyed 20 tanks and captured 71 vehicles, including many heavy trucks and quantities of supplies. It's interesting, we have also in our collection a number of postcards. The French people would send the commanding generals postcards years after D-Day. This is an interesting one from someone from Coigny. Dear General Howell, as the date of June 13th is getting near, I can't fail to remember you and your group and your soldiers who delivered us 2 years ago. I hope you are well. We often speak of you. I hope you will one day pay a visit, this time in peace without shells. And enjoy things of that kind. With best wishes, yours sincerely, Neita Kaiserling. 2 other documents, sets of documents I want to go through, and then we'll move on. The letters we have were all retained, believe it or not. They survived the hurricanes and Hugo, and thankfully Ella, who formerly worked with Elizabeth at the Huguenot Society, worked with me for a few weeks to categorize all the letters, all the documents, all the awards, and everything else. So we went through the letters, and we picked out 4 of them, which I think are very interesting and moving, especially given the dates of these letters. So if you saw on the board, there's a picture of General Howell and 2 other British officers sitting in England. That picture's in England, and it looks as if they have the weight of the world on their shoulders. So if you haven't seen that picture, go see it on your way out. Oh, I can get through this. 22 May 1944, my darling. Just a note to tell you that my first APO has been changed to 2:30, so from now on, address me care of that number. I'll send you the new cable address when it arrives, and until that arrives, still please use the old one. please drop the aunts a card about the change. And a card to tell you how much I love you. I do so much. How much I missed you last week. I will never forget our first meeting in Manila in 1926 and the wonderful time we had together. Our raising our family in Eustis, our happiness with our children at Benning, our life together in Manila again, our companionship at Lewis, and our delightful 3 years at Benning again. You have always been my inspiration and my guiding light. Although at times it must have appeared to you that I wasn't worth much. Without you, I would have been lost, but with you, with me, and helping me, I was safe. My devotion to you has never faltered and never will. We will always be together as we always were when we were young. Please do not change one speck until I return. As a wife, I could not ask for better. And as a mother, you are truly a wonderful one. No wonder my dear girls adore you. I certainly envy them being with you. I have no advice to offer on that one. All I can say is that I love you with all my heart, body, and soul. I've completely recovered, which he had not. He had stomach ulcers at this point. I had completely recovered and today ate everything in sight. Darling, please ask someone to send the overseas edition to me. Don't forget, dear, that I love you above everything else in the world. George. So you have to wonder what was going through his mind when they predicted that 40% of the airborne troops would not make it back. Another one, I think we can get through this one a little bit easier. 28 May 1944. Please excuse no ink, but the old pen is dry, and I cannot at this moment obtain any ink. And rather than wait until morning, here goes my letter and my love to you in pencil. Praise be, I am totally over my stomach problem, and now I'm eating like I did before with no trouble. This is no time to be ailing with a bum tummy, so I am watching myself that there will be no reoccurrence. And as the GI doc over here said, I'm very good, and I'm not to be worried about anything more happening. During the past week, I've been on the go by car and plane. I've been doing so much traveling. All very interesting and instructive and needless. I say I've seen country. However, I'm settled down now, so I'll be able to rest for a while. I wish I could tell you about it all, but you must realize I cannot. One of these days, I'll spill it all. Today has been a perfectly excellent day, and I've been sitting out in the sun, waiting and soaking up the sun. Hope to acquire a tan, but will probably obtain a lobster pink effect. Today is the English long weekend holiday, Whitsuntide. They really go in for holidays over here from Friday until Tuesday. The parlors are packed with people enjoying, it seems, quote, by order, end quote, their holiday. The papers are full of people queuing up for hours for trains to the resorts. But as many trains here were taken off, the crowd is terrific. However, like our idiots on the 4th of July, they still attempt to travel, and the poor servicemen suffer. However, as I have no place to go, I don't mind. I simply cannot seem to realize how our Tiki will be 15 years on Sunday, and this is rapidly becoming a young lady. It seems only yesterday that she was toddling around in the children's pool at Benning and being pulled about by Newt. I surely wish I could be at home with you all on Saturday to help her celebrate her birthday. I know we will have a good time in Washington. She's on her own now, and I don't like it. I'm silly, but I love them just as they are and would like them to remain that way until I return. Anyway, I'll be doing a lot of thinking of her on Saturday. And please get some film and send me some snapshots of the whole family individually and collectively. Since both the girls write about next year's schedule and studies at school, I assume they'll be advancing in grade. I love you so dearly. As you know, my family means so much to me. I carry your picture with me at all times and never tire of looking at my 3 dear ones. You are constantly with me, and that thought is no end of assistance to me. All my love, dear God, dear one, and good night and pleasant dreams. That was 28 May. This is 31 May. My darling, no letter from you since I wrote on Sunday, but I hope for some time today. It's too long for me not to be hearing from you. The weather appears to be good, and the papers are complaining about the heat, but it feels pretty good to me. It really has been lovely. In Aunt Evelyn's latest, she reported the receipt of her bequest. So I guess Mrs. Barrett is on the ball, and soon the estate will be turned over to you. Certainly would like to be home with you to help in my feeble way with the extra finances. If any questions come up with stocks and bonds, be sure to ask questions. This is 11 June. This is after D-Day. My dearest, so far so good in France, and I've been here since very early on D-Day. This is about all I can say. From the paper, no doubt you have a rough idea of where I am. I've had my first taste of shell fire and the other horrid incidents of war. Our boys are doing well, as we knew they would. I and everyone else are so proud of them all. Unfortunately for me, after saving myself for 3 years, I did not land into France the way I wish. So when you read stories of our boys landing, I was not there. He means parachuting. The trip over was a hard one. We were in small boats in rough seas. It was a long time by water. We're living out in the open. I have a nice deep hole that I sleep in every night, just in case. Our flak is tremendous, but Jerry is very wary. I certainly wish I could have heard the news over the radio, the announcement of the invasion. Be sure to write me about it. This is a picturesque countryside, unlike England. The French appear to be glad to see us. Tonight, I'm having artichokes for dinner because my hole is in front of a large artichoke patch. It is strange how one acts under fire, but after the initial shock, one keeps on, particularly a general. Your devoted husband, George. So he completed his service there and was, as I said before, transferred to Belgium to be part of SHAEF, which was the massive Allied command that saw the reorganization of Europe. But there was one newspaper article that was written about him by a young lady who was an armed forces reporter, that the other letters he wrote about this article were designed to keep this article out of the press, but it made it into the press. And it's a wonderful, wonderful article. It's called My Fighting General by Rosalind Coyle, somewhere in the European theater of operations. I finally met a general, not just any general who sits behind a desk, but a real live fighting general who gets right out in the foxholes with his men. It's easy to get a story from most soldiers. There are so many of them, and you can run into them most anywhere in the town or the country. But to actually sit across from a soldier with a big silver star twinkling on each shoulder is something a little girl reporter dreams about, but never supposes will happen to her. And what's more, he looked like a general. Oh, look. You couldn't have fooled me if he'd have been a corporal, had on corporal stripes. Not very tall, but he's got shoulders like a tackle on an all-American football team, and the way he stood with both feet planted on the ground, it looks like it would take a whole German army to knock him over. He's not the handsomest man I ever met, but he's got lines in his face in all the right places to make him look like an advertising man's dream of just what a general should look like. If he'd given me an order to crawl up the wall like a fly, I'm sure I should have tried my best to do it. And with that, firm, undaunted look staring me in the back, I probably would have been able to do it. But he isn't all business. He even laughed at a few of my hopeless remarks. And when he smiled, you could see why all of his men say, he's a heck of a swell guy. And then those paratroopers' boots, well, they always do get me. But on a general, they seem to symbolize all the daring and glamour and hard work of a whole airborne division. I tried to make way to get him to talk about some of his battle experiences, but he passed over them so slightly. Just said, when I asked him what happened after they got to France, quote, well, we just fought, end quote. I suppose being a general, you'd see things in such a big picture that ought to be hard to think of your own individual experience as meaning a great deal in the whole overall spectacle. But Taurus Lights, the American Red Cross field director assigned to his outfit, kept pumping him with such questions such as, how about the time you held the bridge? And the general would almost have to tell me about it because Taurus would possibly get it all mixed up and he wouldn't let me exaggerate a bit. But I found out enough to convince myself that he was sure enough frontline general, the kind who leads his men instead of telling them what to do and then following up to see how they made put. For instance, when supplies and reinforcements were being landed on the beach, Jerry decided it was a lovely time to start lobbing over lots of 88 shells. The first reaction of the men was to leap out of their trucks and to hit the dirt, which caused a terrific congestion and gave the trucks and men behind no opportunity to seek cover. But not my general. He leapt up on the causeway and himself acted as an MP, directing the clogged channels of traffic until all of the supplies were off the ship. And he wouldn't let his men do anything he wouldn't do himself. I don't understand very much about how they fight wars, but anyway, it seems that a bridge is something which both sides want, and they're always trying to get them from each other. And if they can't keep them themselves, they'll blow them up. There was one of these bridges that the Germans couldn't keep, but they were going to blow up. But the only way to get to it was through a town which had been taken recently by the Americans, and that they hadn't had time to clear it of snipers and booby traps. So my general gets himself together with a group of men and not only personally leads them through this town, but takes the bridge and holds it. He went into France on D-Day and remained right on the front line with his airborne unit. Mr. Leach said that practically every night he slept right in the foxhole, like all the rest of the men, and at one time he saw him manning a machine gun. My general's name is Brigadier General George Howell, and he graduated from West Point in the class of 1925. His father went to West Point too, as did his mother's father. It looks as if this is the end of the line, unless they start training wax there, because he has two daughters, Felicia and Anne Louise. He lives at 3500 Monroe Street in Columbia, South Carolina, where he is an active member of the American Red Cross, and an organization to which she has belonged since the beginning of the war. If I ever meet another general during the war, I'm satisfied. I met a real fighting general. That's it. Thank you.
Un, deux. Good? Oh, I can hear that. Well, thank you very much, Neita, for welcoming us here. I'm Luc Chalery, representative of the Consulat here in Charleston area. So for the first of all, I'd like to thank not only Neita for this organization of this welcome ceremony and this 80th anniversary of the liberation. I'd like to thank Mr. Morrison for sharing this incredible story and humanitarian works. I'm going to put my glasses if you don't mind. So from June 1st to June 4, 1944, we could hear on the radio what we call TSF, these words from Paul Verlaine, Chanson d'automne, les sanglots longs de l'automne, les sanglots longs des violons de l'automne bercent mon cœur d'une langueur monotone, announcing the imminence of Operation Overlord. These words still echo in French hearts. Thousands of mostly young allies soldiers came to liberate France and Europe from occupation. Today is a day of remembrance for the sacrifice and for these heroes who came from far and wide in the name of freedom, and for the civilians who fell too. To this end, 48 American veterans are visiting Normandy today, with logistical support from Michelin, Delta Airlines, and Boeing, to celebrate the D-Day. They will also be accompanied by select college students who will escort them during their stay and learn their story. They arrived yesterday in Deauville, and they were triumphantly welcomed by the local, the school, and the First Lady of France. They will be part of the grand convoy for the souvenir. The entire Normandy coast will be celebrating. Nearly 2 million visitors came to celebrate the day, and several presidents, including President Biden and Macron, as well as ministers from other countries, were present. Thousands of candles were placed in front of soldier plaque yesterday, which is for each cemetery at least 25,000. And fireworks were launched from more than 20 Normandy beaches. A giant parachute drop took place today in Saint-Norville. In short, the whole Normandy is celebrating heroes. So beyond the military effort, we often forget the humanitarian aid that follow, which was not small scale but sometimes forgotten, and yet so necessary. Entire city destroyed in the war required gigantic amount of aid, which the United States was able to provide on an unprecedented scale. Aid from all over USA has led to towns becoming twin cities. And thank you for keep doing this sister city. And it's thanks to those associations like Sister City and Alliance Française, such as the one in Charleston, which celebrate this morning on the Laffy, this important day, on the invaluable help Charleston provide to Flers. I'm gonna now read, before I finish my a letter that we received today from the mayor of Flers. I'm gonna read in French and in English. The order doesn't import, actually. Let's start in English first. So this is Yves Gasdoué, Mayor of Flers. We are joining you today, the 6th of June, 2024, on the occasion of your ceremony to honor the young soldier, the Sons of America, who shed their blood to liberate France and Europe. Many of them rest in the American cemetery of Colville and St. James in Normandy. We owe them our freedom and our democracy. The débarquement, military landing operation on the beach of Normandy, necessitate, in order to be successful, many bombing inland. Our city of Flers, an important transportation platform for train and roads, was devastated on June 6, 1944. About 100 civilians died, 70% of the city was destroyed. It is that cost that we enjoy our freedom again at the end of August. We have towards you a debt of gratitude for your commitment and dedication. Indeed, the Medway plant, elaborated in Charleston, helped us rebuild our city materially and humanly, as the orphan invited aboard the ship can testify. Your support still has a crucial role in the friendship and twinning exchange that unite both our city. On this solemn day, our thoughts are wholeheartedly with you. And that's Yves Gasdoué. I'm going to read in French now, probably faster. Nous joignons à vous aujourd'hui, en ce 6 juin 2024, à l'occasion de votre cérémonie, en l'honneur des jeunes combattants, les fils de l'Amérique qui ont versé leur sang pour libérer la France et l'Europe. Beaucoup d'entre eux reposent dans les cimetières américains de Colville et de Saint James en Normandie. Nous leur devons notre liberté et notre démocratie. Le débarquement sur les plages de Normandie nécessitait pour réussir de nombreux bombardements dans les terres. La ville de Flers, important nœud de communication routier et ferroviaire en ce jour du 6 juin 1944, est anéantie. Une centaine de morts civiles, 70% de la ville détruite. C'est à ce prix que nous avons retrouvé la liberté fin août. Nous avons envers vous une dette de gratitude pour votre engagement et votre dévouement. En effet, le Medway Plant, conçu à Charleston, nous a aidés à nous reconstruire matériellement et humainement, comme en témoignent les orphelins de Flers invités à bord du Cher. Votre soutien est toujours le moteur de l'amitié et du jumelage qui unit nos deux villes. En ce jour de recueillement, nous sommes de tout cœur avec vous par la pensée. That concludes his remark. So I was about the importance of the individual help of Charleston provide to Flers. We have also another event took place a little bit after the liberation. It was when a train left from United States to provide furniture and other to France. France also decided to send back some a train, and it started with a decision to send some present in a wagon, and it turned out that it was so generous that they end up sending 49 wagons. So those wagons were called wagons de la reconnaissance, as known as Merci train, and each wagon was sent to each state. I had the honor to visit the one in Bishopville, who's being renovated, and it was very touchy to talk to some veterans about the story of this one of those. Actually, when they left France, they were still present, sitting on the station train. So that day on June 6th, and those that follow with the effort of some help to others, cemented the foundation for the creation of the UN and later the NATO. And we'll keep forever the flame of the souvenir of this day. I'd like to add that Normandy doesn't wait until June to be visited like a 14th of July or 4th of July. There are always French and foreign veterans and family who come to visit all year round. Because of this duty of remembrance is a constant reminder that peace is fragile. If you have opportunity to go to Normandy après le gigot and the tarte normande, go to visit the Normandy landing, you will feel this deep serenity. The French are the French, sometimes little grumpy, but the French behind the skin have a good memory. And they will always be grateful for the sacrifice made by American soldiers and for the aid they provide for reconstruction. So as a Frenchman, and in the name of the French people, we thank you for the bottom of our heart, and God bless you. Thank you.
happy. We I'm so happy we have done that sister city with Flers, because the people in Flers are so grateful for what Charleston has done. I mean, it's an incredible bond. I know Charleston and Flers are not exactly equal in economic. Flers is a small city, Charleston is a bigger city, but I think we have something which is much more important, is the past and history. And that will never go away, even if something don't happen and the economy fall down and we are not always friends. We will always be friends when you have been friends for 80 years, and we are still friends. And when you need to go to Flers, if you go in Normandy, I mean, you are the first one to be able to say, we are welcome in that city like if it was yours. And it's really great. So I'm so happy to be able to do that on this Memorial Day, we are very grateful to every American who came and helped us. I lost a lot of people during the war, so I'm speaking about something I know very well. So I'm very, very grateful to what the American had brought in my life. Thank you.
Anne, if you could come up and say just a few words, we'd appreciate it. And then we have time for Elizabeth after that.
Well, I wasn't expecting to speak, but thank you, Neita, for organizing this. And when Neita approached me after church one day to see if she could have the event commemorating the D-Day anniversary at the church, we thought it would be a great fit for our congregation and just the connection with France, and of course all the sacrifices made by the men and women in the during the D-Day invasion, Americans, French, and all the different allies involved. So thank you, Hagood, and that was really fascinating. And we're just glad to have everybody in the church, and I hope you'll come see us again soon. Thank you.
And then, Sean, would you like to say a few words as our corporate sponsor?
Well, it is always a pleasure to be able to collaborate and coordinate with Neita on anything that she's doing. And I hope everyone has renewed interest in Charleston Sister Cities International and the important work they do, which now really spills into a lot of soft diplomacy, which is necessary in the world that we live in. I think as Americans, perhaps we've gotten a little too soft, and I think we've forgotten exactly how high the cost of freedom is, and that it is our striving to make freedom bigger, bolder, and broader than it has ever been before, and that work is not done even to this day. So I hope that you feel energized by what you've heard tonight around how important liberty, justice, and freedom are, and that each of us need to carry that torch for making freedom brighter than it's ever been.
On that note, I'd like to see if Beatrice is prepared to serenade us with the La Marseillaise, and then we will all join in for the Star Spangled Banner.
Bonsoir. I am really honored to be here tonight, being from Falaise, 20 minutes away from Flers. So I grew up with a dad who had on his bumper sticker, "Merci aux Américains." Also, well, since we heard wonderful stories, I thought maybe I would share my anecdote about my family and my grandpa. I think he would be happy. He's no longer with us, but after France was invaded, he decided he was not okay with us being invaded by the Germans. Unfortunately, the word got out that he was in the resistance, and so he was captured and sent to break stones for the Reich, for the Autobahns, for the big highways. And he did not like that either. So after a little while, what he did with his best friend is that they escaped. So they were on the run, and they were fugitives, like from Switzerland to go back towards Normandy was not a small feast, especially when you don't have money, and it was really difficult. But he did, and he arrived in Paris, so he thought, okay, if I can get a train from Paris now to Normandy, that will be okay. So he went, and he had a watch, a valuable watch on his wrist. So he went into that store, he came in, and he tried to get a good sum for it. The shopkeeper said, okay. He went to the back of the store, shut the curtain, and came back with the Gestapo. So, yeah. So close to Normandy, yet so far, 4 hours away. So that second time, he was sent to Germany, and he had to work there until you liberated us, the Americans liberated us. It took a long time for him after the liberation, to come back to Normandy because the roads were destroyed, the trains were destroyed, everything was a mess. But he did make it back, and with my grandma, they had 3 more kids. And here I am. So, voila. So that was my personal anecdote. What else? Well, also I wanted to thank the Huguenot Church, the Alliance Française, the Sister City program. Thank you, Neita. So my name is Beatrice Frask, and I'm going to read a little something about the Pen Pal program. So in 2016, I was asked by Marie-Laure Arnaud to establish some ties between the students of Flers, France, and Charleston. Since then, over 120 pen pal connections have been established with elementary school, middle schools, high school, and even higher ed participating. The program is here to stay. Here I will mention the names of a few participating schools: James Simmons Elementary, First Baptist High School, Charleston Day, and the Citadel. In Flers, we have the Collège of Sévigné and Saint-Thomas d'Aquin. And here I would like to recognize my former student, Lydia English, to represent the Pen Pals. So she has grown since high school. Lydia, voilà, from First Baptist, who now offers French. I have another little anecdote from the Pen Pals. One of my cadets, Cadet Shaw, actually quite recently, you might know him, Zane, after connecting with his alluring pen pal in Flers, which he called, oh, quelle bombe, he decided to major in French and go to Flers to meet her in person. Who knows what might have happened next? We don't know. L'amour, toujours. Again, merci to the French Huguenot Church, to Neita and the Sister City program, and to l'Alliance Française, to Monsieur Chasleves et Marie-Laure. Un grand merci to all the fallen soldiers who did risk their lives and offered their lives for our liberty, for our freedom. I take this very seriously. It's very dear to my heart. And to all the French people, and in Normandy especially so, because we see the tangible evidence on a daily basis of what you have accomplished for us. And voilà, now it's going to be la Marseillaise. Allons enfants de la patrie, le jour de gloire est arrivé. Contre nous de la tyrannie, l'étendard sanglant élevé, l'étendard sanglant élevé. Entendez-vous dans nos campagnes mugir ces féroces soldats? Ils viennent jusque dans nos bras,
égorger nos fils et nos compagnes. Aux armes, citoyens, formez vos bataillons. Marchons, marchons, qu'un sang impur abreuve nos sillons. Amour sacré de la patrie, conduit, soutient nos braves vengeurs. Liberté, liberté chérie, combats avec tes défenseurs, combats avec tes défenseurs. Sous nos drapeaux que la victoire accourt à tes mâles accents, que tes ennemis expirants voient nous triompher notre gloire. Aux armes, citoyens, formez vos bataillons. Marchons, marchons, qu'un sang impur abreuve nos sillons.
Now Neita for the final word.
Well, I think on that musical note, we can, excuse me for having my back to you, we can say that I think we've done our best to commemorate this meaningful and significant day, and we appreciate you being here. We're hoping that maybe we can make sure that Charleston celebrates this occasion annually. I know that for those of you that are not familiar with Gertrude Legendre and the Medway Plan, I would really encourage you to Google her, but there's also a book called Gertie that came out probably about 5 years ago that is about this extraordinary woman, and she is related to Keir Manigault, who I don't know if some of y'all know, and she was in the OSS, which was the forerunner of the CIA, Secret Service. She presented herself in D.C. After her husband had joined the military in World War II, and because of her upbringing, she had been able to experience Europe with her parents and her family for summering and holidays and education, and she was multilingual and very acquainted with Europe. And so she was a perfect candidate to join the OSS. And there's some very interesting stories about her at the Ritz with Hemingway, and spending a little bit more time with the Germans than she anticipated at one point. I don't want to give all of this away. I would encourage you to read the book. But after the war, I believe it was in 1948, she and an associate, William Bennett, came up with the idea of providing assistance to war-torn Europe that was in dire need of provisions on all levels. And so she was able to, along with William Bennett, start with Charleston in pulling together all of these supplies that Luke had mentioned, the French consulate a moment ago. And this grew into a national endeavor that not just was there to supply aid to France, but throughout Europe for several years. So at any rate, we really, when we think of France and we think of Normandy and we think of Flers and then we think of Charleston, there are so many levels of connections that are not just with the Huguenots arriving on these shores to flee persecution and to start their lives anew here in sometimes an unforgiving land, but they made their own and built this beautiful church. Okay? And you can see all of the Huguenots that have contributed to Charleston and this state and our nation. So with that, again, there's a history and a legacy here, and I think that's enduring with France, and France is, as again, a dear friend and very pivotal in our allied relationships and making sure that the world, as Eisenhower had hoped, was peaceful and prosperous through trade, educational exchanges, pen pals, and so we would encourage you to learn more about options where we can exercise citizen diplomacy. So with that note, thank you very much, and I hope you have a lovely evening.